Thank you so much, Kyona, for coming to talk with me today. Welcome to the Black Women in Opera Show, which is just a show for opera singers to talk about things that can help their lives be better. And today we're going to be talking about staying hydrated and being the best singers we can be by taking care of our bodies in the best way possible. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, yes. And first, thank you for inviting me onto this platform and sharing this information with your community. It's an honor. So my name is Kyona. I'm an Ayurvedic health counselor by title, also an Ayurvedic yoga therapist. And what does that mean, right? It's like people have heard that word. It's spelled all kinds of ways when you see it. It's like, what does that mean? So Ayurveda, it's an ancient healing science modality based in India, and it's been practiced for forever and still going strong today. So over a 5,000-year-old system of medicine, and it's said to be the sister science to yoga. So there's been this like natural blending for me because I was a yoga therapist first before I stepped into the world of Ayurveda. And I like to clarify because a lot of times people think that it's yoga that's really intended, for the body. Like they'll do yoga to exercise, and that's fine. I'm not knocking the reasons why people do yoga because that was my entrance into the world of yoga many, many moons ago. But what I like to try to put into perspective is the fact that yoga is really a practice for the mind. We use the body to ultimately be able to control the mind and control our senses. There's a process, there's steps that are involved. But Ayurveda is actually the practices that we do to maintain a healthy body. So yoga and Ayurveda, are a perfect blend because you are approaching, wellness from body and mind and spirit. So it's more of a holistic practice. And in the Ayurveda landscape, we work with diet and nutritional practices, but it's also lifestyle. So there's herbs that so you could say that you're an herbalist if you're practicing Ayurveda because you're using those herbs. But and again, you're not focusing just in one area. You're working all of those areas. So there are lifestyle practices that are done to maintain health. Ayurveda provides this opportunity for you to really learn about yourself because the practices will only work if they're appropriate for the person. And so there's a process to determine, what type you are. It's a body-mind type. It's an elemental science. So we're talking about 5 elements from earth to ether. And, those 5 elements all manifest within each person very specifically. So everybody has a unique makeup.
If people don't know what a dosha is or don't know what the doshas are, like, could you run that down? Is there a simple way to even run that down? I don't know.
Yeah, I can. Let me try. This is like a little elevator speech in Ayurveda. So there's this thing of you'll hear about doshas in Ayurveda. And what is a dosha? So those 3 types that I mentioned, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, those are doshas. And they're energetic forces. So when we think of Vata, if we're talking about a Vata person, and what I will say is most people we're all a combination of all 3 of the doshas, right. But there are predominant doshas that show up for people, and it's usually 2 doshas. Rarely, or occasionally, I would rather say, occasionally you'll find someone who is like equal Vata, Pitta, Kapha. But there's typically like a Vata Pitta or a Pitta Kapha. There's a combination of them. And we say the first one because they're, the predominance falls on that one. So when we're talking about a person and we're talking about a Vata type, there's physical characteristics, there are mental tendencies, and there are disease tendencies. And so with a Vata person, the qualities that we're looking at, I'll talk about the elements and the qualities that are involved in this energetic force. From an elemental perspective, Vata is made up of air and ether. So very subtle, very light. Start to think of the qualities of air and ether, and that will help you describe Vata. When you're talking about a person, physical frame is going to be thin and kind of long, and they may even move a little fast, talk a little fast. Their mind might be a little, spacey, very creative, maybe just kind of aloof. Vata's facial features can be a little asymmetrical, or you might see like gaps in the teeth, or they tend to be cold, like run cold on the temperature end of the spectrum, and maybe have dry skin. So if you think of, ether and air, it's dry and light. There's a mobility feature to a Vata. And, there's nothing that we say about any of the doshas that are negative or positive. It's not one better than the other. It doesn't work like that. It's just that this is what these characteristics are. In a Pitta, we are dealing with the elements of fire and water. And those might sound like super opposite, like the water will put out the fire, but there's when we think about it within the body, it's not just water. We're talking about digestive enzymes. We're talking about the blood, that type of liquid in the body. It's got more of an oily quality to it than just a wet water quality to it, but it's fire and water. So in a physical structure, what we're looking at is someone with a kind of compact muscle structure, pretty symmetrical in the features. They run hot because fire. They have a sharp quality to them, so they might be really intense, but very focused. So you see, like, none of these are really negatives or positives, depending on how they're coming across, right? Pitta person might be a workaholic. Kind of burn the candle at both ends of a person. Digestively, I'll go back to Vata. Digestively, Vatas are going to experience like a gassy digestion. They might even have like hard stools because they don't have that water element so much. Whereas a Pitta digestively might deal with acid reflux. They might deal with loose stools. Pittas might have smelly sweat. So and Pittas might have acne issues or skin issues. There's that in the Pitta category. In the Kapha category, we're talking earth and water. Okay, so that's a very, I just think of Mother Earth when I think of Kapha. We're talking stable. We're talking about a person that has more round features physically in the face and in the body. Akapas are going to have more of a cool, not cold like Vatas, but they're cooler to the touch and may even have a little moisture to their skin, more plump skin. Digestively, they may experience constipation or slow transit time. Like they may sit on the toilet for a long time for their business to happen. A Kapha is going to be very much about love. Kapha is just like, you want to hug Kappas, want to heal the world, but a tendency can creep in of like stagnancy, like a stagnant tendency, or just a heaviness quality. There's a denseness to a Kapha. Now, when you think of all those and knowing that there's a mixture of all those within us, when it comes to determining a person's type, it can't just be done from physical observation, because you might, see the Kapha somewhere and the Vata somewhere. And so that's why other questions have to be asked about the lifetime of the person so that you get a full picture of what's going on. And when someone is doing one of these, I like to call them discoveries. When someone is doing this, it's important to think in a broad spectrum when you're talking about what's my constitution. You want to think over the span of my life, have I been this, this, or this, and then pick the appropriate one. Now, that same process can be done to determine what a person's imbalances are, but you're talking current state.
Right.
So so there's the the big span, and then there's the current state, and those might be two different truths. But if a person's filling out a form online, like doing a quiz online, they're going to possibly fluctuate, looking at like the idealized version of themselves when they're answering these things, and that's why it's important to work with someone. So it's like, oh, that's cute. That's okay. And like, I want to know the real, like, I want to know the real, like, so, you know, when you have that interplay with someone else, it's like, it's easier to kind of get peel the layers back, you know.
Right.
So when you do the work after you, like, the constitution is determined, and then the imbalances are determined, as you chip away at the work, it's like, let's look to see how much we're getting back to your nature, how much closer are we getting back to your homeostasis.
Okay.
But yeah, so those are the Vata, Kapha, Pitta. Oh, I can go on for days and days, because then we could talk about that, and then, you know, okay, what does that look like on the Ayurvedic clock, and then what does that look like as far as the seasons are concerned, and then what does that look like as far as our lifetime is concerned.
Right.
But in those all of those elements are important to, I think, take into consideration when you're working, you know, in Ayurveda. As a person, you know, as a practitioner of Ayurveda, you practicing Ayurveda, and I'm sure you've had that experience where you're like, okay, I remember saying something about this, like, is this what I should be doing now, or what?
Yeah.
Springtime, okay, is this in alignment with, you know, the practices for spring? But yeah, it's so fun. I could go on and on and on and
it's
on.
It's really changed my life, and I just really think that people who we're working with their bodies can have to find something that works best for being balanced, like you said.
So, you know, for singers and for your community, I think it's really, really important to understand that the performancing that is done is like an athletic workout. You know, it's that's how I view it. You know, I view opera singers especially as athletes, and you know, what are ways that you can, you know, infuse Ayurvedic practices into your life to really, you know, nourish the system and really, you know, nurture yourself. It's like there are so many things that I could recommend, you know, just in general, not even knowing what the type is, because there are certain things that, you know, we can look to the season and say, you know, if it's warm outside, you know, you might not want to be doing things that are going to overheat you, because that's going to take you farther out of balance, right? And I'm just using these general concepts. Right now, we're dealing with something really interesting that's affecting, you know, respiratory tract and whatnot. So we are, you know, looking at our foods that we're eating. We're looking at our, you know, our hydration. You know, how much we can keep everything exactly, right? We've been here before. You know, what are ways that you can really focus on those, like hydration, for instance? You know, there's this really easy general equation that you can use to realize if you are hydrating enough. I mean, aside from, we all have heard, you know, if you're thirsty, then you're already dehydrated. We've heard that, right? But it's like, how do I really know how much is enough? And there's a simple equation. If you take your weight and then divide it in half, that's the number of ounces of water that you should be drinking during the day.
Okay.
So what is it, like if you're 150, I think that's what, 75? I don't do math in public, so I memorized that one. That's
a good one.
You know, right? So 75 ounces, that might, I think that's like maybe 3 of, you know, I have my different vessels that are around the house, but I'm constantly drinking water, and it's like trying not to guzzle the water, but sipping the water throughout the day. And then, you know, there's a lot that has to do with water and how you're taking it in really does affect the systems. And we're going to drink room temperature or even warm water.
Right.
And maybe it even has some lemon in it, you know, in the morning when you start your day. I know you've experienced that routine. So warm lemon water. Yeah. And when I think of singer, you know, it's like, that's just something that you can really do, even putting a pinch of Himalayan sea salt in it to upregulate the electrolytes in the system. So, you know, you could do that. You can do infusions of herbal teas throughout the day that are going to, you know, add to your water, because that counts. If you have your soups and your broths, that counts as your water intake. You know, if you're working up to that 75 ounces, how am I going to get there when you're looking like, I don't even like water, you know, people that say, I don't even like to drink water. You know, starting to get that water intake earlier in the day so that it's not keeping you up at night because you forgot to, I'm talking about myself right now, because you forgot to drink your third jar and you're
oh
like,
my gosh, that's
but
me.
I still have to do it before I go
Right.
to bed. So it's just going to keep me up tonight. Okay. Then there's that lack of sleep that you have to deal with. But, just the water in the system, we're between 50 to 75% water. Our cells have to function. It just helps with all of our bodily systems, the water does. So as you're singing, I know that, you're losing moisture.
Right.
Because the expiration, is that act is you're really losing. So, I mean, I think in your community, it's even more important to find ways that you can, add to that hydration. And then we can talk about it in the food landscape too.
Right.
Eating juicy fruits, those watery vegetables like your cucumbers, your radishes. Think of like white vegetables like jicama, things with a high water content. You could be focusing on eating in that realm. Staying away from, really dry foods because
right.
we know what that can cause. So there's things that can be done generally, and then there's really specific things that can be done, on an individual basis to really help, promote balance. But yeah, the hydration thing is, once I share that equation with people who haven't heard it before, it's kind of an eye opener. Because I remember the first time I heard it, and I did the math. I was like,
right.
Okay.
That's a lot of water.
And then I got really I realized for myself that it mattered what I was drinking it out of, the water. For me, it's like it had to happen. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to make sure I have water vessels that are pleasing to the eye. Or like this glass for me, I love the way this glass, the rim of the glass, this makes water easy to drink. So we always say, like, try make it, pleasurable for yourself.
Right.
Pretty water bottle if you need to just make that keep that in the forefront. But yeah, I kind of want to challenge people who haven't done this before to start to do the warm water with the lemon in the morning and just see if anything changes for you. Like before the tea or coffee, just do that first and see if anything changes for you, because we're looking for like regulation in your elimination,
right.
And that could really help promote that morning movement. And I've done these experiments myself too, so I could attest to them. It works. It does. Yeah, that's definitely something cool. And I think that everybody could benefit from Ayurvedic practices. Adding on one little thing at a time, again, not trying to overwhelm yourself, because again, it's a cumulative effect that takes place when you do these practices. The more you do them and the longer you do them, it becomes habit. So that's your lifestyle, and you're seeing the benefits of them. But it definitely works. You just have to really stay with the practices.
Yeah, that's definitely true, because Kyona and I started working together in November, something like that. So it's been a couple of months since I started like implementing different Ayurvedic practices into my routine. And it's still like after 6 months later, like, okay, I got that one thing that I was supposed to do down. Now let's move on to the next thing. Or I fell off on this thing. How do I re-implement that back into the routine? And it's really just helped me, like you say, like stay hydrated and be very aware of my body and like what I'm putting into my body.
Yes.
Because I love cracker snacks. I love dry food. So how does that affect my elimination system? How does that affect my hydration? How does that affect my singing? Because one thing I don't play with is about this voice, okay? I love my voice. I love singing. And anything that's going to hinder me from singing, we got to fix it. So that's been really instrumental in helping me fix that. And also just like with acid reflux, because I suffer from acid reflux, so I don't have that problem as much anymore, because I do drink my lemon water in the morning. I don't eat foods that will irritate me in my acid reflux. I stopped eating at night, which was a bad problem because college happens. And just implementing like things in my schedule that will help me be a better singer, because acid reflux will take your voice. And like I said, I'm not playing with my voice. So I think what would be beneficial is definitely breaking down that schedule, like the schedule of the Kappa Pitta time. What was the other one?
So
Vata.
it's, yeah, Vata, Pitta, Kapha.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that schedule. It
So
really knocks it out.
the clock, the Ayurvedic clock, and when you should be doing, like, are you speaking of that, the doshic tides, right? So there's the concept of Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Those are those three types. So there are these energetic forces within us, and there are also those Vata, Pitta, Kapha times of the day, Vata, Pitta, Kapha times of the year, Vata, Pitta, Kapha times of life. So I like to talk about the concept of like interlaying all those cycles over, one another, and then dialing it in to figure out, okay, when should I be doing what?
Right.
So you mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to point out. One was about the acid reflux, and then mentioning your lemon water. Some people might cringe when they hear that connection, but I want to stress that yes, although lemons are acidic in their natural form outside of the body, once they're, consumed, they become alkaline. So that's one thing that that's why it didn't, disrupt your issue, but it's kind of helped you move through some work, right? Another thing is about the eating at night and falling in line. We were just talking about the scheduling, the rest, the proper sleep for your community. I can see that just as easily as the acid reflux messing up your vocal instrument. The lack of sleep, not getting enough rest, and speaking from a performance standpoint, I mean, if you're not feeling, rested, if you haven't, gotten the restorative sleep that you need, then, the performance, I'm sure, will suffer. Yes. So as we honor these the Ayurvedic clock, realizing that there's a specific time of day that you should be waking up, there's a specific time of day that you should be doing your exercise. Very importantly, there's a specific time of day that you should be eating your largest meal. Mm-hmm. And that ties right back into honoring the digestive fire and trying to keep that functioning optimally. So we like to say that between 12 and 2 p.m., and that's when the sun is at its highest, that is when you should be eating your largest meal, because you'll be able to digest it best. And, we've all, I'm sure, experienced that, we eat our largest meal for dinner. It's how we were raised. It seems like the natural order of things. And it's pretty detrimental to our elimination or our digestive experience if you are, eating in that way, and if it's later than it should be. Right. So ideally, there's the ideal and there's the actual. Some people are just like, I share the schedule with them, and they're like, I work at night, like I can't. It's like, okay, but this is what is said to work for people. Let's find something that works for you. But right. Ideally, you want to finish having your lightest meal at night, and you want that to be around when the sun goes down. So our time changes, so that's not always at the same time. Right. But around 6 o'clock at night is when you want to have your last meal, and that's so that food can digest, and that, when you're going to bed, ideally around 10 p.m., that at around 11 p.m., the liver, which is responsible for helping clean up, the systems, is not trying to, or it's just not compromised because it's, the body's trying to digest the food that you ate too late. Right. So it's like, if we're eating at the right times and the right amounts of foods, then we're helping the digestive system, we're lessening the burden, on other organs, so that everything else can function optimally. So that's kind of, I love talking about the best time of day to eat the largest meal, and then when you should be eating the last meal, and really allow for that restorative process to take place, during sleep. So, we've got people that like to stay up past 11 o'clock, or that like to kind of munch or graze at night. And I've done all of that. So I get it. I get it. And right now, especially, things are different for us. A lot of right. people are on different schedules, or maybe are suffering from not having enough structure or schedule. Like right. they have too much flexibility. So it's like, and Ayurveda has something for that too. We've got something for that too. It's like, regular schedules is something that we really try to promote and really instill in people, that, if you've created these regular schedules and this structure, it just helps again, it helps you live more harmoniously, and it's not, the body's like, oh, what's next? It's like,
Yeah, what's happening?
knows it's coming next. So things can just happen in a more, we say, sattvic way. So a very balanced way.
I love how you were talking about like when the liver starts to doing its work. So what if
Yeah.
like for a lot of singers, if you're performing, your opera starts at 7 or your concert starts at 7, and it's like I know whenever I get done performing, whether it's rehearsal, whether it's actual performance, I'm like when I get home, I'm like hungry, and some of it is like anxiety hunger. That's like, okay, how did I do? I'm on an adrenaline high. Eat. So,
yes.
And then some of it is like my body is tired, so it needs to be replenished in some way. Do you have like vegetables or some good light foods that would not disrupt what's going on with the body? If it was like
my recommendation, and then again, that's the way you would want to think about it. What you just posed is, okay, that this is going to happen. What should it be then? Instead of just like going just all in on whatever. Focusing on, my recommendation would be to focus on warm cooked food. And I would think a vegetable soup, and it could be, chunky vegetable, or it could be, smooth vegetable, or, blended or broth or whatever. I would focus on something that's going to be nourishing like that for you, but that's not heavy. You don't want to go into like the pastas or the processed foods. You want something really nourishing and something that's going to, again, if it's cooked, it's going to be easily digestible. All right. So if it's a raw food, if you're thinking salad, if you think salad's the way because it's light, and that's kind of what we've been taught, that's a healthy light. It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody's type, I'll say.
Okay.
And so focusing on something that's warm and easily digestible, and that has a nice moisture content in it as well. So in the soup world or stew world is where I would go. But then again, the portion, I would say to go on a lighter portion. If it's going to happen, if it's going to be late, just go for a lighter portion than you would normally do, like for dinner. But that I think would keep you out of trouble. Now there's spices that can be, included in the equation to help with the digestive process. There are herbs that you can take that can help kind of offset when you're going to have to do something that you wouldn't normally do. It's like, well, let me take these herbs, my post-digestive herbs, so that I could kind of guarantee that I'll have a, not horrible elimination or digestive experience after that, after you're going to partake that way. So, those are things that can be included as well. And again, I don't expect people to be able to do all the practices all the time, but when you're going to be doing something that may be out of the ordinary or indulging in some kind of way, that's when I would reach for my tools if it's not been something that I've already been implementing on a daily.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's why I love working with Kyona, is because she's very just gracious, and she makes you approach this with grace. And that's what I like, because it's not like super judgmental or super strict or rash, because we opera singers. So we got people who's going to be critical of us all the time. And Kyona is not critical. She's going to work with you. She's going to give you the advice. And she's going to say, if you tell her this not working, then she's going to find something that's going to work for you. And it's really just a great partnership. And I just love working with Kyona. And I think, I guess to end our Ayurvedic discussion would definitely be to just talk about, like, if somebody were to work with you, what kind of things would you be talking about? Because I know doshas are important, and everybody has their own constitution, and those can impact what kind of practices you will have to implement in your life. And I definitely suggest you talk to Kyona about that. But anyway,
thank you.
This is my little plug.
It's true. It's true. Thank you for that. Working individually with someone, it definitely is a journey. It definitely is a partnership. So thank you for stating that. It's a co-creation. And again, the first step is, I'll get on the phone with someone and just talk to them about what Ayurveda is, so that they have, they know what to expect. And then, does it sound like something that would benefit you? I want to know what the goals are and, what the experience level is. But when we enter into that agreement and start the work, the first thing that is done is to determine the type. So it's like, you'll see like a dosha quiz. You may have seen it online somewhere, and those are not harmful, but it's what is done with that information, and was the information applied properly. So we go through a pretty extensive process to really determine what the constitution of the person is. So, what is your type? And a step further is to then uncover what the imbalances are. So we have what the nature is, and then we have what the imbalances are. And that provides the roadmap to getting back to balance.
Right.
And it's always taking the person's goals into consideration. And it is that interplay of me sharing recommendations and knowing good and well that if it's not well received, or if that's not vibing on your end, it's not going to be done. So let's find something different. I want to set you up for success and not throw a whole bunch of stuff at you and see what sticks, because that's not fun for anybody.
No.
But there's a checking in process. There's a regular check-in process, and the whole schedule is based on, again, what works for the individual. So it's beneficial to work through at least 5 sessions or so to get in the rhythm of knowing if these recommendations are going in the right direction, what needs to be changed up, if there are herbal formulas involved, or eating plans or yoga practices. We want to know what's working for you, and are you seeing successes, or are you facing challenges? And I expect both all the time, and then we just kind of see where they are and work from there. So it's definitely a relationship that is entered into. Thank God that the work can be done on this platform. So I do meet with my clients remotely. I have clients in different states. I'm in San Diego, California. So yeah, it's just a beautiful collaboration is what it is. And it's definitely based on the individual needs. And that's why I love it, because it's not a one size fits all. It's not like that at all. I love learning. I love, researching stuff. So there's that process, it's like I'm learning about the individual, and then I'm finding out what I think could benefit them.
Awesome. So if there was like a goal to reach, is like, I guess that we're constantly reaching towards, what would be the goal with this practice?
So there's a concept called, there are 3, I'm trying to think of a way to say this simply. I would say the goal is to come to a place where there are the least amount of fluctuations. We're always going to be going up and down in our mental and physical, and spiritual experience, right? There's a very aggressive state, and then there's a very dull state. But ideally, we want to be in between those two. Mm-hmm. So all of the practices and all of the even food plans or ways of eating and things that Ayurveda approaches, that's all done with the goal of getting to a sattvic state, is what the word that translates to balance. Mm-hmm. And it's working when the relationships around you start to reflect that, and especially the relationship with yourself, like right. When there's right. harmony, when you're noticing certain things come with ease, be it your elimination, your digestive experience, your sleep improves, or your energy levels improve. But yeah, it's I would say the goal is to find sattva in everything that you do. So to find balance.
I hope this information was helpful to you guys who are watching. And also, my last 2 questions are, if you could write an opera, what would it be about?
I'm such a Ayurveda geek. It would be something with the elements and nature. Like it would be, I'm sure it would be an opera to try to, teach people about Ayurveda in that world, it would have to be. And I could just see it being like a visual feast for the eyes, along with the tonality of it. But it would definitely have to be about that, because I want to go see that.
So we got some work to do. That's what I'm hearing.
I see it.
The opera needs to be done.
Bhavana.
Right.
Let's write that one down.
Write it down.
You're gonna write that one down. Yeah.
I love it.
Noted.
So what's next for you?
Oh, so That's an interesting question right now. Because the things that I would normally say would be next would be like, oh, I've got this event, you know. So I think what's next for me is just continuing to try to spread the word of Ayurveda, and again, especially now when our immunity is kind of the main topic of conversation these days. Really just spreading the knowledge on how we can, how we can do our part, because, there are things out there that are going to be out there and they might land on us, but how well are we going to be able to fight things off because of the practices that we've been doing or the ways we've been living?
Right.
I'm more interested in just spreading the word about what can be done to bolster our systems and to keep us healthy and hydrated and rested and everything. So just being able to do that, and probably on these platforms, doing more Zoom calls and more connecting with people to share this information, not in person, but virtually.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you?
Thank you for having me. My website's probably the easiest way, or email is the easiest way to find me. I am located in San Diego, but again, I'm virtual these days until further notice.
Right.
My website is Ky-veda.com, and that's Ky-veda.com. And then my email is Kyona@me.com, Kyona.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.